Well, yesterday, February 9th, 2013, the Corvette was on this side of the shop, and I'd kind of completed the sanding operation, so it was time to move it over on the other side of the shop. And I'm in the process of framing up a spray booth. You can see that I've got the 2x4 studs about 4 foot on center, and I've got a door here to go in and out of. And I've got a pretty good sized booth, really. And my goal is to get the car in the booth, along with some sawhorses and a workbench back on this end where I can put all the small parts. So I think I've got just enough room that I can work everything at once, which is important. I don't want to be loading up the spray gun multiple times if I don't have to. So the fewer times I can do that, the better. I've got a couple of big furnace filters. They're 30 by 36 inches. And they're going to be up on this back so that I can get a good air change going. And it'll go out the back end through an old fan here. And if anybody's wondering, no, it is not explosion proof, but yes, it does work very well. I've painted 2 airplanes in this area as well, and the surface area of an airplane is probably 3 times what a Corvette is. So I know that what I'm doing will work, and it'll help control some of the dust that normally gets into paint. And I guess I would love to have a nice booth to do this in, but I don't. So the alternative is to just do it in a garage, and anybody that just does it in a garage, I admire you for doing that. I'm kind of somewhere in the middle here with a nice workshop that's heated pretty well with a wood stove. And so we've got to separate the area that could be a source of ignition from the area where we'll have some flammable spray mist in there as well. And it takes a lot of spray mist to ever become flammable. As long as we maintain positive pressure in this area, it won't be a problem. I've done this before. I know it works. So here in Iowa, it's cold outside, and there's snow, but there's also no bugs this time of year, so it's a good time to actually do the spray painting. Well, I've got the plastic sheeting on my paint booth now, and the door's in place. I'm walking into my homemade paint booth. See the filters on the one end, and down to the other is the exhaust fan that I've got set up. One thing I've done is add just a little bit of extra lighting in here. You can never have too much lighting when you're painting. And I've got these incandescents over here, which I've tried to tuck them up back out of the way to make sure that I don't bump them and have them fall during the painting operation and break. There would be a flammability issue there. So just got to be cognizant of where they're at, make sure that I don't bump them and knock them off the wall. So I'm just about to the place where I'm ready to start doing some cleaning, taking soap and water and washing things down and wiping things down, starting to mask them off and getting ready to do the painting. So the first thing I'll be doing is priming the front fascia, sitting on this sawhorses back here, and the back fascia with a flexible primer. One thing I'm going to do before I start any spraying operations in here is I'm going to take a little compressed air and run it around the car and hit all the cracks and crevices to blow any dust loose that I know that if I don't do it now, it'll blow out later when I'm spraying. I'm not totally done with masking, but I'm done enough that I'm going to go ahead and prime the fascias, and I won't be spraying up at this end. I'll kind of save that task for later while the paint is drying on the bumper fascias. So I've got my fan running, and the filter's back there, and the plastic on the side of the spray booth is kind of puckering in, so I know that I've got good negative pressure in this room and positive on the other side. And so we'll go ahead and blow the dust out of this thing. Well, I apologize if the video is a little jumpy, but I'm trying to film it a little bit and speak and show you everything at the same time. But before we get going here, I thought I'd talk a little bit about spray guns. This is a SATA 2000 digital, and I paid probably about $400 for it, probably about 10 years ago now. It's a pretty nice gun, really. It's got a digital readout right here, so you can see exactly what the air pressure is right at the gun. You can see it says 51 there as you pull the trigger. It's stabilizes at about 23, 24 pounds. So you know exactly what the air pressure is right at the gun with that. As far as the adjustments available on a gun, there's one right here that will regulate the amount of air going through it. You really don't have much use for that one. This one right here is a needle valve that will regulate the amount of paint that goes through the tip of the gun. This adjustment right here will regulate the fan width, and you can see that so as you turn that back and forth, it'll change the pattern of the fan. Now you can orient the fan either vertical or horizontal by turning the tip of the cap, and caps are typically about 1.3, 1.4, 1.5 millimeters wide. This one's a 1.4, which is kind of a good middle of the road tip for what we're doing. And as you disconnect the air, you can see it read 0 now. One thing that I also did is I made this little fixture to hold the gun. Makes it nice to be able to drop the paint in there and do everything with the gun before you hook it up to the air hose. Well, fellas, I'll tell you, painting sucks. It really does. The only part great about a paint job is when you're all done and you can look back at what you've accomplished. Before I get going, I'd like to talk a little bit about safety. You can see I'm wearing a Tyvek suit to keep all the paint off of me, off of my skin as much as possible. Also, I've got some old glasses that I'm going to wear because they'll likely get speckled up a little bit, so I just soon do it with old glasses. The first product I'm going to use is relatively benign. It's a single part. It's got no cyanide in it or anything like that, so I don't have to worry about it. So I've got this 3M organic vapor brush sprayer, and they work great. They really do. So anyway, that's what we're going to be using. Also, we've got gauntlet gloves on as well. So the flexible plastic parts, the front and rear bumper fascias, are now primed with a special primer that's made specifically for flexible plastic parts. And the next step for them will be probably a light sanding and then a coat or two of urethane primer to get them in shape before we paint them. The paint booth did a great job. One thing I guess I'd like to talk to anybody, if you've never used a paint gun, how important it is to break them down completely after you've painted. Make sure they're cleaned up well. So we got the cap and then the orifice there, and the fluid needle, and back on the other end of it is the spring and the adjustment on it. And you take the container off the top, clean that out good all the way around. If you don't keep the gun good and clean, eventually you're going to get buildup in there and it's just not going to work well. So keeping a paint gun clean is really important. So we got all the masking on and we're ready to put the epoxy primer sealer on now in these areas like this, the rest of the car. What I've done is sanded off all the oxidized paint, got it down to a good layer that is a good starting point. And one thing to remember about the masking operation is you need to get masking wherever anything is that you don't want painted, because believe it or not, one way or another paint will get there. And one thing I need to do is get a little piece of masking tape right there around that keyhole. And I need to slide something in here where this smear hole is, otherwise it's going to go through and get the glass down below, although you probably could never see it. And all this masking around here is masked back to the place where I can get the edges painted. Underneath I've got some plastic covering up the engine to make sure that that doesn't get any paint in it. And where the lights, headlight doors are as well, I've got a piece of paper back there so that paint can't blow in, get into a place that we don't want painted. I've used all kinds of tape. I work construction and a lot of the blue tape is left over. It doesn't stick real well, which is okay. Tyvek tape sticks really, really well. So you want to be careful about using anything like that. The only place I've used Tyvek tape is where I'm taping like plastic to other tape or something like that. You wouldn't want to put it on a painted surface. It might pull the paint off or leave residue behind. Where the tail lights are, I've got a piece of masking behind there so that paint doesn't blow through and get on a spare tire or something like that. So tomorrow we'll go ahead and put the epoxy primer on the car.